I'm Chris.
I'm sleepy.
I'm Topher.
Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into modulation pedals. As always, we also have our weekly riff challenge, and at the end of the episode, we'll be featuring music of a local Fort Wayne band, Private Education. So let's jump right in. How we doing today, guys?
Well, I think you're wide and awake and thriving, right?
I am doing great.
I'm doing
Christmas.
great. Yeah, I'm ready to get this week over with. And
We are recording on a weeknight.
I'm
which
ready
is
to
super
get this
fun.
month over with. All right, so we're going to talk about some new gear news. I only had a couple things, but I think the big thing, I guess it's going to be kind of late by the time this episode comes out, but the Wampler Pantheon Deluxe.
We're always late, but yeah.
Yeah, by like a month. Yeah.
It's exciting though.
Yeah. King of Tone Killer? Yes, thoughts? You probably need to know what we're talking about.
I have no idea.
I feel like from what I've listened to that the Wampler folks are saying it's not. They're trying real hard to say it's not.
Saying it's not.
But I mean clearly it's two blues breakers in a box.
Yes. So
I have heard something about this.
Yep. So you're familiar with the King of Tone, maybe?
Yes.
Okay. So King of Tone is two blues breakers, one on each side.
Oh, okay.
So that's why people are saying, like, is this a King of Tone killer? Because it's $50 cheaper, but you also don't have the 4-year wait now. How long is that wait?
It's 4 years. Yeah.
Okay.
And you get MIDI control,
And you get MIDI control.
which is crazy.
How far?
For just a drive.
How far are you on the wait list?
For the King of Tone?
Yeah.
I'm not on the wait list.
Really?
I had a Prince of Tone which I really actually kicked myself for getting rid of because it sounded really good, but we cycle through pedals.
Yeah.
King of Tone and Prince of Tone. Is it one smaller?
The Prince of Tone is half of the King of Tone. It's one pedal instead of like two drives in a box.
And it's also half the price, and you don't have the 4-year wait for it.
Okay.
However, I am
4-year wait.
6 months out
on the King.
on the King of Tone. I'm 6 months out.
Dude, that was very nice of you to get me an early birthday present.
Yeah, about that.
That's pretty awesome.
June, I think, is when I'm
They
scheduled.
sound
Yes.
really like. From my own use, I've only had the Prince, but like I can imagine that one plugged into another Prince.
It might just be a recording studio tool because I'm afraid to take that out.
I would not take it anywhere.
Maybe a really nice gig.
Not O'Sullivan's.
Not a Sullivan's. Sorry, Sullivan's. We love you, but no.
They get it. You get it.
But yeah, looking $250 for that thing, so
That's really not bad.
not bad at all.
And that is a killer circuit. So
True. Only other thing I had on my list, I know I'm missing something. There was something else that came out cool. The Harley Benton, and I'm not even going to, the DNA FX GIT Pro.
it's such a catchy name.
Isn't it? So I'm guessing probably neither of you guys have seen this one because you probably don't look for the cheap crap.
I have not.
Okay, so this is a Kemper knockoff by Harley Benton. Yeah, so it's a full big pedal, like multi-effects pedal board. Yeah. But it's supposed to have like any sort of digital modeling you want into it and all that. And I think it's $299. So yeah. As opposed to the Kemper, which is $1,200, $14. Yeah, it's a lot.
Does it have? Can you do? Does it have like mic inputs and everything, and you can do your own like?
I don't recall. I didn't check for mic inputs.
That's a big thing with Kemper. Is
It's
being able
true.
to do your own impulse responses directly from the unit.
I'm guessing if they're gunning for them, then it might. But I don't know. I mean, it's Harley Benton. You never know.
I mean, if you get a cheap like all-in-one, that's not bad.
Yeah, seriously. All right. So I guess we're gonna just move right along. We got the original riff challenge this week.
Today's original riff challenge is: what if Jimi Hendrix was resurrected by an unskilled necromancer, and now he wants to play nothing but modern country? So sad.
I'm really afraid, guys.
All right.
I feel like Chris should go first this time. I feel like I go first a lot.
Yeah.
What? No, we leave it to.
Oh, yeah. Flip. Call heads. You.
Okay.
Good. Because I did not feel good about either of these.
I'm not sure if I feel good about this. I feel like I feel something about this.
I feel like I've heard this played in a country bar,
Yeah.
but really,
I
it's just a broken Fender Tweed.
I honestly, I was just like, what's the countryish riffs and licks that I know? Let me turn on octave fuzz and phaser.
I was like, yeah. It's because we're obviously like Hendrix wasn't a clean player. Like he wasn't.
Mhm.
There was slop. He was a good. I mean, he was a fantastic guitarist, but like Page and there's slop, and that felt like his slop.
It's a little sloppy.
I don't know what to do with that.
That's fair. All right, what
All right.
do you got for us?
Oh, mine's. I'm almost ashamed of this one.
I am not a Jimmy.
I was trying to channel Hendrix at Woodstock,
Okay.
but very confused about what concert he was actually at.
I see. I only have one critique. One critique.
Oh Lord.
Because mine was equally something.
Yeah.
But I do not believe that Hendrix ever owned a delay pedal.
Oh.
What? It was that's true. You got me there. You got me there. I don't know what it's like to play without delay.
It's definitely Adam, man.
Yeah, it's fine.
That was.
I feel like Hendrix is rolling over in his grave either direction.
Either way, he's not happy.
That was not it. I'm not proud of that at all. All right, let's
That
move
was
on.
weird.
So, we jumped through all that pretty quick. We're going into our main segment today. No guest, but Topher came up with the idea to talk about modulation.
I don't know a lot of things. A lot of things have been taught to me this year from Adam, and let's dive into it a little bit more and teach me some more.
All right, so that means you need a guitar. All right, so with the magic of video editing, Topher now has a guitar that appeared in his hands. We are going to be using the Electro Harmonics Mod 11 to kind of go through and talk about modulation effects. For those that don't know, the Mod 11 is a modulation pedal that has 11 separate kinds of modulation. It's Mod 11. Yeah.
Wild.
It's a affordable way to, if you do not have mods yourself, it is an affordable way to get started and figure out what you like.
Not a terribly affordable pedal.
Well, it's
for as many things.
Yeah,
as it is.
so-
it's affordable for having all of the modulation.
Yeah, I mean, for $150 you get into it new. For another $50 you could get a used MD200.
Fair.
Yeah. Let's kind of give a quick background. So, one, what is modulation? Modulation is any type of effect that changes the sound, right? It modulates the sound, whether it's phase, whether that's volume, or whether that's pitch. Does all of those things. So what we're talking about when we say phase, you know what? You've seen a waveform before, right?
Yes. I know what a waveform looks like.
All right. So for those of you on the audio podcast, that's the it looks like a little squiggly line that they use to represent sound. Okay, so when you have a wave, that dip down is what we call a trough, and when it goes up, it's called a peak. Okay?
I learned something.
Yes. So you have a trough and a peak. Okay, it represents air or electricity changing. Okay, so if you take two of those waves up and down, right, going up and down,
Okay.
and put them next to each other, like imagine above and below each other in a picture. We would, and they,
Are they like cuddling?
yeah, kind of.
Okay,
If
cool.
the troughs and peaks line up, we call that in phase. If they are opposite, we call that out of phase.
Okay, I got you.
Got it? Now, what that means...
What makes the swishies?
Yes, and if you move that, it makes things swish. And that's how we get phaser. Or, well, actually, that's how we get chorus.
Oh. Okay.
But phaser kind of works the same way. All right? So we're going to talk about phaser first. Do we want to do a little quick history?
So phaser history is a little weird because, somebody's going to beat me up after this whole episode for my history.
I'll do it.
Me too. We're giving a very broad overview.
Doing broad overviews. Yes. If you want in depth, go to somebody else, maybe. So, really, the first phasers that people really think of as phasers, Maestro had, the PS1 in 71. That was designed by Tom Oberheim. And then, in 74, you had the Phase 90 and the Small Stone from Electro Harmonics, which are probably the two that people know the most because they were more affordable and there's a lot of them available. But technically, the first phaser pedal was really the shiny Univibe in 67, which is a Univibe, which we'll talk about later. But it's technically a specialized phaser.
Okay. Yeah.
Which just works differently. But for our purposes, let's say Maestro, Phase 90, Electro Harmonic Small Stone, and really if you listen to records of the 70s, you are going to hear phasers everywhere. If you know what an early phaser looks like, this is an early phaser from the 70s. This one is a Maestro, so the first brand that really had the name in phaser, but this was not designed by Tom Oberheim. This was designed by Bob Moog from Moog. Moog.
Oh, that's cool. You need that on your board.
It is a cool pedal.
And these are super cool. Yeah.
All right, so let's hear what does phaser sound like?
For those who can't see, Chris is adjusting the depth and the speed of the phaser.
So this is like what you'd hear on old R&B records. You'd hear this. Say, what's other good examples? I know Floyd would have used it quite a bit.
Floyd.
Yep. A lot of things that are copyright that Topher shouldn't play. So moving on from there and kind of related, I guess that means we can talk about chorus, which is kind of like a phaser. We're being very broad here. So if you take two signals from your guitar and move them just out of phase, just a little bit, so one's modulating and one's not, that gives us a chorus. So what's a good way to say chorus? So a good way to explain chorus is literally a chorus of singers who are all singing just slightly off, and we're kind of getting that sound, that chorus effect.
I think of it I read this once, so don't quote me, but with the Cure, if you listen to the Cure and early stuff with Robert Smith playing, some of the stuff that you think is chorus, apparently, from what I've read, is playing a few guitars that are just microscopically out of tune from each other. So if you think of just lots of voices singing the same note, but they're just not 100%, and it gives you that kind of just a little bit of swim. That's what chorus sounds like.
And that we'll actually just talk about it now. So that also lines up with trichorus, right? So a trichorus is a single signal and then three other duplicated voices on top of that all modulate in different fashion. That's that real 80s sound, and we'll demonstrate that here in a minute too once Adam talks about a bit of the history.
Yeah. So chorus is a little interesting because, and we will get to something called Flanger, but they're kind of intertwined relationally. They have an intertwined relationship. I don't know. But because they came around similar times, I guess. But if you want to think of chorus Abbey Road Studios, 1966, The Beatles, they used something that we would now call like an automatic double tracking effect. More or less, you took a signal that you had recorded, duplicated it on another track, and just played it back at the just slightly off timing. So you have like two things playing very closely together, but the pitches are going to be a little off because they're just not quite in line.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's early version of that. Boss was the first one to really like everybody would know was in a pedal. That would be the CE1. That was in the mid 70s. That's a standalone version of everybody's favorite jazz amp, the JC120 jazz chorus amp. They basically just took the circuit for the chorus out of that and stuck it into a box. And that kind of, I don't know, that became the defining, I would say, effect of the 80s.
Yes.
Think of like the Police and like just a ton of bands from that era where you hear that just like slightly swingy guitar. Genesis.
Yeah. It just
He used it on everything.
Yes. let's do some.
And let's hear some chorus. That's pretty.
So we're adjusting the rate. All right, keep going. Let's give him some tri-chorus. Pedals out a little more. Definitely that older sound, like, yeah. I use tri-chorus for, we do a Tiffany song.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're alone now.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
You got it now.
Yeah. So that's what I use the tri-chorus for. That's why I know it's there. All right, moving on. That gets us right into Flanger, which is somewhat related, like Adam said, to both chorus and phaser. So I'm going to kind of read a little bit what I found.
As I say, this is where I got confused. Like what really started this for me is like flanger and chorus to me sound so not flanger. Flanger and phaser sound so similar to me, and I don't understand the difference.
So yeah, functionally, and I had a synth teacher that actually talked about this. Functionally, when you are making these in DSP, it really has more to do with how much time the signal is delayed than anything else.
Okay.
So if you have a really good phaser, like I think Moog probably did this, you could actually just adjust it through phase to chorus to flange, from one to the other. Okay. So I think I should have quoted this, but one of these is from Brian Wampler's website, and one of it's from I don't know where else. Like a phaser, the signal is split into two copies, then one of them is delayed in time very slightly, usually no more than 20 milliseconds. The delay time is also changed at a constant rate, which can be manipulated with a knob. So it's kind of like phaser that has a few more functions and goes no more than like a 20 millisecond. Okay. Which is 20,000ths of a second.
Audibly, it is a little more like a phaser. Functionally, it is more like a chorus. From my background on it, my understanding, Les Paul is considered generally the first person to use it on a record, using variable speed turntables and tape machines, playing two identical signals back and back, basically at slightly different speeds with a delay. End up getting that flanging tape effect. Later on, Beatles used it, and basically the engineer at the time, Ken Townsend, putting his finger on the flange of the tape reel, slowed it down slightly, causing a flanging effect, which is I think is where it's got its name, as far as what I understand.
Yeah, that's what I've always heard as well.
Tomorrow Never Knows, that's on the Revolver album from the Beatles. That's a good example of it. Also, stuff by like
Van Halen.
Another Brick in the Wall.
That too, yeah.
Van Halen.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, let's hear some Flanger.
Oh, boy.
You can do some Van Halen for us, right? Panama?
What do the different color LEDs mean, Chris? Cool.
So if you let it sit for a minute, deafen the strings, you should be able to hear. I don't know if this pedal will do it.
Okay.
You can hear it self-modulate, and hopefully the folks in the audience can hear that. If you have a real feedbacky one, you'll hear it. They call it jet planing. So whoosh, whoosh.
Flangers are much more severe than chorus.
Yes. So this is also I associate with a very 80s effect. It is used in shoegaze, I'm fairly certain too. But it's very noticeable. It's not subtle in any stretch of the imagination. So a lot of people don't like it. I think it's awesome, but
I love flangers, and honestly, you can, if you are a person who likes flange, but you also like chorus, but you don't have a ton of bucks to spend. The cool thing is a lot of flangers, if you buy one and you turn it way down to a minimum effect, it basically is just a chorus at that point.
Let's see if it does it. You're gonna hit it real quick for us, Topher?
Yep.
This one does it.
It doesn't?
It does.
That's too much there. Hey. That's a very easy sounding chorus, but that's a chorus to my ear.
It's really just they're the same effect. It's just more.
Yeah, a different delay time. Yeah. Mhm. That's cool.
That's pretty. I like that. See, as I say, because that was always one thing that confused me. Because you gave me that T-Rex chorus and flanger, and I was like, they sound so very similar. It's hard for me to really differentiate.
Are we going into the insane level of different types of flanger, or are we?
Oh,
I didn't look into the
additive, subtractive, through zero, and barber pole flanging.
that might be a bit much for me.
That's okay. I'm
only really familiar kind of with through zero anyway, and I didn't write any of that down.
That's okay. I didn't either.
Okay, good. Well, we're gonna
This one doesn't.
cruise. Ooh, fancy. And this middle one might be that yellow might be one of those other modes.
I think the mod does through zero.
Does it? That would I only use it for one song anyway, and not even all the time.
I think of through zero as almost like static flanging, it's just not. Doesn't move. Basically it's just Smashing Pumpkins. Everything they did. That's
fair
through
enough.
zero flanging.
Okay, yeah. Huh. Cool. Next thing I have is since we're going off, we're going through this path. Univibe is what I have next on my list.
Okay.
So Univibe, I'll read what I have. The effect, though often associated with chorus, is in fact created through a staggered series of phasing filters and then an optical circuit using LDR, or light-dependent resistor. So in other words, it's optical. It's got a little bulb that I guess pulses, and that's actually what controls the circuit. And that's not uncommon to see in a lot of pedals. I usually see that with tremolo. You'll hear about optical tremolo. It makes things smooth is all it does. Long story short, it's a series of phasers effectively that get an effect that's supposed to sound like a vibrato almost, but it's kind of mixed with this chorus in there too.
I think the idea was they were trying to get a Leslie effect out of a pedal,
and it didn't quite get there. And I think it was Shine Eye that did those too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do you say? I say Shine Eye.
I always say shiny.
Or I've heard,
but I have no idea.
I've heard Shinny, Shine Eye, and Shiny. Yeah.
But the Univibe sound is really
Yes.
it is supposed to be like a rotating speaker. It's just not quite there.
Yes. So, Univibe is really its own thing. It doesn't sound like standard vibe, and it doesn't sound like rotary. So let's try it out. we can very much think about Hendrix on this one too. There's a little bit of drive in there. There's the vibe. There's no reason.
Yeah. When it gets that little bit of drive, it feels a little more like a real
vibe. Yeah. I've never really used that sound all that much, so that's kind of cool to actually hear it in this.
I'm glad you guys understand. I can't tell the difference.
Listen to some old Hendrix records.
Yeah, this one I don't hear as much on Flanger. Like Flanger and Univibe to me sometimes sound very similar.
So,
like, I don't think I could, if somebody was playing them in something I wasn't familiar with, I don't think I could probably tell you.
So Univibe is flange, though. It's just a kind of flange, right?
It's kind of phaser.
Phaser. Yeah, it's
like a stepped phaser.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's complicate.
I've never even heard of the term Univibe.
Univibe. It's a specific effect, like Univibe. So when we talk about flanging, phasing, and chorus, we're talking about a general effect. Okay. Univibe is like Univibe TM. Like it was like a brand. You know what I mean? So it was one guy trying to get a specific sound. Yeah.
It's also I could be wrong, but I think that was pretty much one of the first modulation pedals outside of a tremolo.
Yes.
Outside of a tremolo.
Yes, my entire knowledge of Univibe comes from the JHS pedal musical.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, like if you look at a lot of these, I don't think they can call it Univibe. It just calls it Uni, U-N-I.
Okay.
Yeah. So like I said, it's a specific, its own thing. But since we talked about like it's supposed to emulate Rotary, this is 2021 and people can actually emulate Rotary much better now. So you know what we're talking about when we say Rotary, like. You know,
phones.
No.
It's a phone.
We're talking about Leslie's.
Yes.
Leslie speakers in specific.
I know you guys talked about it. I tried not to pay attention because I didn't want to know what.
I was hoping we would have a Leslie-ish thing to demonstrate, but that has not happened yet. So yeah, do you want to talk about? You want me to do history first on that? Is that?
Yeah, very yes, because the like the technical side of this is fairly boring and straightforward.
Yeah, I know nothing about this, so you should
I will
definitely
do a short. It's basically like if you are standing next to a train when it goes by. That is a Leslie speaker, ish. It's a Doppler. It is a Doppler effect. So you affect volume and pitch. But the original. So just going back though, the idea of a Leslie rotary speaker, it was created by the Hammond Organ Company, or with the Hammond Organ Company by the brand Leslie. It was basically a box that sat next to your organ. There was a speaker aimed upward, and above that there was a set of cones on a motor that spun. So the sound was spun into a circle around the room, and hence wherever you were standing, you would hear the volume and pitch based on where you're at.
That's cool.
So it's a very organic, acoustic way of doing those modulations. And Stevie Vaughan was probably the first person to really adopt that effect into a guitar. Yeah.
You've heard this 1,000 times. This is the rock and roll organ sound when it does that thing. That's a Leslie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it.
Okay.
I mean, basically, he took a Leslie speaker. Steve Vaughan took the Leslie speaker from an organ and ran his guitar amp out into it. And then since then, everybody has wanted to do that. And
now you can buy an actual, like, whoever owns, I think it might be Hammond, you can actually buy one of those geared and EQ'd for a guitar and everything. They're like, they're not cheap. They're not
I did
cheap.
have one for a while.
Did you? Yeah. So I think they're about $1,800 nowadays. Like, they're not cheap, but they're not.
Oh, no, I didn't have the speaker. I just had a Leslie pedal.
Oh, yeah, no. So you can get into the new X Leslie pedal for I think 110. You can get the EHX one, which is the Lester K, and I can't remember the other one. It's another.
They have a Lester K and a Lester G.
That's it. Yeah.
One has a compressor built in for guitarists.
The
other one's made for keys.
250, right around that price range. Of course, Strymon will sell you their super premium
Because it's Lux.
because it's the Lux for Strymon money, which is Strymon money. And I can't remember. There's another big one. However, we got one right here in the Mod 11.
Sounds like the same thing to me. You guys have better ears than I do.
Stereo.
I mean, I kind of hear the difference, but man.
This one sounds pretty different to me.
This is noticeably different than the other modulation.
Mm-hmm.
To my ears.
Hit it again.
This works better with open chords, I think.
Straight up and down on the pedal works best for this one. There we go.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so
I get what you're like. I think I've heard. I can picture the sound in my mind, but to me, it just doesn't sound like.
If we get to a point where we like have enough listeners that they support us and we can and we can go use a Leslie, I will tell you it is another experience.
yeah, because this one, long story short, like the technical side of this is it's just filter sweeping, like it's just doing like moving an EQ automatically, and the central portion of that EQ is 800 hertz. Yeah, that's it. There's nothing to it.
I feel like personally, it feels it's like that is the only one that is digitally hard to emulate.
Yeah.
If I have played through several Leslies and various times, and when you feel it swirl around the room, it is a different experience. And also the fact that most of those have a tube-driven section to it, so you actually can drive the gain into the speaker.
I think this is also one that really, like, even if you're using the emulator, it needs to be stereo because part of the like
feel the room.
I was gonna say because like I hear it being different from the other ones, but as how you guys have described it, I don't hear that.
Yeah, and this isn't one I use personally a lot either, so I can see where. I mean, some of these are similar, right?
Right, for sure.
Or some of them have very specific uses. Tri-chorus is very much I'm playing 80s cover music, you know.
Okay.
But yeah, it is what it is.
Yes, it helps me to hear the explanations of why these sounds are happening, and I kind of get a little bit a better grasp of what I'm hearing differently. But
it also might help to know, and like, this is why you don't need an individual pedal for each of these on your board. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's also use cases too. So if we're talking phaser, I'm going to run that, like we've talked about this, I think, before. I'm going to run that before dirt, and that's going to have one sound. I'm going to use flanger, and I'm going to use that after my dirt section, and that's going to have a completely different sound.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So we're using this in one use case. Guitar straight into modulation into amp.
Yeah, that's a good point. Modulating your distorted signal or having your dirt become modulated sounds a lot different. So we may have to talk about that
separately
down the road.
Yes. Like there's 1,000 ways. Like there's no one right way to do things, right?
Right.
So related to Rotary is my personal favorite. harmonic tremolo. Do you have anything on that?
I only have things on tremolo.
Okay, that's fine. We'll get into tremolo because tremolo is true volume modulation. Harmonic tremolo is not a whole lot different functionally than rotary. It's just not paying attention to the what frequency is the central point of sweep, right? And there's also not a whole lot of history on this.
Yeah, it's a modern effect.
Yeah, like somebody in the past 20 years said, I'm going to try to emulate what the old Fender amps did.
Some of them sound like that, and then some of them sound like someone put a wah pedal in the middle of your tremolo circuit.
Okay, yeah. I hear a difference with that.
Yeah.
I guess this is kind of what I was thinking with that rotary sound.
This sounds more to me like rotary than rotary does, honestly. Yeah.
Speed and depth, or does that have
Speed, depth, and I forget what the other one is. Color. It's a tone. Yeah. And the modes change how those all work.
I kind of like this one.
With a little bit. There you go. Try that.
Sorry.
No, you're good. A lot more than I should.
I like it.
Yeah, it's cool. So if you're looking for this, the Flint, Strymon Flint is the big one that people are familiar with. The EQD Hummingbird, is it? The Walrus Monument. My personal favorite is the Keeley Eddie Heinzelman Vibotrem. Yeah,
I think it's Verbotrem.
Verbotrem, and the workstation model of that. Yeah, you think I know because that's the one that's on my board, but I don't.
Have you tried the Earthquaker one?
I haven't. No, that's the one that gets weird.
I regret getting rid of it because it had because you could set it for pick attack.
Oh,
and that's where it got real weird, like almost wah into tremolo.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, so the frequency sweep would attack based on how hard you picked.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. No, I've only had.
I don't know how useful it is, but it's cool.
Well,
it's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had the Flint. I have the Keeley right now, and I have this thing. But the Keeley is because it has a little bit of a drive in it, so it gets that that old school amp sound more. Yeah.
So I think this helps me learn that tremolo is more what I'm looking for sound.
Well, this is harmonic tremolo.
Harmonic tremolo.
This
so
is not
tremolo.
regular tremolo. Okay.
Okay, let's do this.
So I think we're gonna do.
Here we go.
Tremolo next.
That's next on my list.
Cool.
So harmonic tremolo is related to flange and chorus?
Harmonic tremolo is a cross between phaser. It's a phaser that only affects certain EQ points.
Okay.
So I take that back.
It's a tremolo with a sort of a phaser.
Yeah. So it takes away the top portion and leaves the bottom portion open. The takes away the highs and lets the lows pass, and then it flips.
Science.
Yes.
The important thing to remember is without it takes a lot of time, I think, personally. I mean, from my personal experience, it takes a lot of time, experience playing with a lot of these things to really grasp to some degree the difference, and also like to figure out what it is that you like.
Yes, and figure out the use cases. Yeah.
Yep. Because some things are similar, but then when you put them actually into like a band or into like a song, like then you go, oh wow, I see why I should use this versus this. So it definitely takes time.
So once again, we forgot to record the transitions at the time of the podcast, so here I am punching this in again. This is where we'll stop part 1 of the modulation episode. Be ready for part 2 next week. Right now, we're going to jump over to our musical feature, Lee Cook of Private Education. Remember, if you're on YouTube, you'll have to go down to the description to find a link to the featured song, because we don't want to get a copyright strike, and we don't want them to get a copyright strike either. If you are listening on the audio side, we'll be featuring the song at the very end of the podcast after our sign-off. Thanks for sticking around, everybody.
Hey guys, we are here today with Lee Cook of the band Private Education, and we're going to be talking to him about his band, about the stuff they're working on, and about, I think they have a new release coming out too. How are you doing today, Lee?
I'm doing awesome. It's Saturday, so got up early, had coffee, and super stoked to be here talking to you guys. I think I've heard all of your guys' music as well, so awesome. Happy to talk.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So getting right into this, can you kind of tell us about your band name? I'm just curious. Do you guys all have some kind of private school education, or is this just?
Yeah, it's honestly we probably spent like 3 weeks where that's all we talked about every time we saw each other was what we were going to call ourselves. And lots of different ideas were around. Some people wanted something ironic. Some people wanted something cool sounding and stuff. But yeah, we actually ended up on Private Education because at the time, 3 of us had gone to Full Sail. One of us is a Berkeley grad, and the other one went to school for music in Texas. And like now we all, we work for a music retailer. So it was kind of like, a self-deprecating, like, oh yeah, private education type thing. But I think it fits in really nicely with the style that we do and like our songwriting, flavor as well, because there's some like weird esoteric, influences in there.
So that was a good segue into our next question. And I know bands hate this question, and I always hate answering it, but I'm still going to ask it. How do you describe your music, like in regards whether it's genre and style or other bands that you might closely or semi-closely relate to?
Yeah, that's something that as a band we've talked about quite a bit as well. The other day, actually, after practice, because customers of mine at my job always ask me that kind of thing too when I, describe that I'm a musician. And what we ended up coming up with at the end of practice the other day was art pop, which I can totally take and run with, but it's somewhere in like that alternative indie rock vibe. Our influences are so varied because all of us have different opinions and songs we like. Our lead guitarist Louis, he's a Berkeley graduate, and he's very much into like math rock and like those kinds of very technical things. I come from an acoustic folksy background, so I'm very much into that like side of things, and it all comes together to be like, I would say, like an artsy, almost like a cabaret style vibes sometimes. Yeah,
I love how when you bring people together from all different backgrounds, how it blends into something, and you never know what you're actually going to get until it happens.
Yeah, definitely. And it's very humbling too, because it's like I'm the lead singer, but I'm by no means like the only songwriter or whatever in the group. Like I do like a lot of the lyrics and like vocal melodies, but like, there's definite songs where I have the backseat on them and someone else is like, running the show to their vision and stuff. And so like when you get 5 people together who all want to create, it's super humbling and cool just to see what everybody else is capable of and brings out of you.
Oh, definitely. So I've
been told you guys have some new music coming out soon.
It should be out by now.
Or
Yeah,
is
by
that?
time for
Oh,
this
sorry. It
time.
will probably have been out when this is. So
Yeah,
I should just say that.
on the 15th of December, a song is coming and or did come out.
Yes.
And yeah, so that's actually one of the songs that originally when we started, it was like I had a bunch of songs already and we wanted to start doing gigs. So we did like a bunch of my singer-songwritery stuff and like fleshed out as a band. This one coming out is very much like the product of everybody kind of contributing. It started out with me, the drummer Daniel, and the lead guitarist Louis getting together and like working something out. Louis really taking like, he's the guy from Berkeley and stuff, so he like knows music to the next level for sure. But yeah, I'm really proud of it. It should be out by now. Definitely the most professional, like polished thing I've ever worked on. I'm really proud of it. I think it's cool.
Cool. What's the title?
Oh yeah. We've depending on how we settle on this, I think we're also kind of tongue-in-cheek gonna call it Midwest Girls Can't Break My Heart Underneath the Full Moon, kind of like as a stab at one of those
Nice.
like Panic at the Disco style song titles or Fall Out Boy or something like that.
Yeah, I like it.
Mhm.
Where are we at? There we go. So
And it should be available everywhere: Apple Music, Spotify, all that stuff. So
awesome.
Sweet. Yep.
If you want to share any links before the episode comes out,
Yep.
we'll actually
Yeah.
they're posted.
Put it in all
Sure.
the description and stuff. Yep.
cool.
Since this is a gear related podcast, of course,
Mhm.
can you tell us about your rig? Like, do you have a go-to guitar, go-to amp, kind of, or certain
Yeah, so
you always use? And
like I play guitar probably the least in the band.
Okay.
But you can see it behind me. That's my PRS. It's a Vela S2. I run it through a Vox AC15. Don't really have a lot of effects on it. And mostly in the band, I play acoustic guitar. And I just have it's just a Fender T bucket that my girlfriend got me a couple years ago. I've been making my living with it since then.
Okay.
Louis, the lead guitarist, has a collection of guitars. He has some GNLs, like some like Tele knockoffs, and well, not knockoffs, but you know, GNL is Fender essentially.
It's really
Yeah,
fun.
it is. Yeah.
And he's just straight through a Line 6 Helix and then one of those Head Rush powered cabs.
Mhm.
Super good tone. He's much more in like the cutting through the mix lead guitar, style.
Gotcha.
Then our other guitar player, who right now we're kind of in between rhythm guitar players. We have one playing the show with us, but it's not the guy that was originally playing with us. That's much more similar to, my setup, where it's like just trying to get some warm tones coming through a tube amp. And then we have a bass player who switches back and forth between two different Squire like P basses, one fretless and one fretted, and that just lets him kind of slide around and stuff. And he has a big Ampeg combo unit, which is really nice. So that's kind of, I'm trying to think of anything else. Oh, and the microphone wise for vocals, I love the Telefunken M80. That is like my live microphone that I use every time. I like a purple one. I think that pops on stage.
You find the purple is better tone than like the standard like black or chrome.
Yeah, the purple really hits that sonic frequency just right, man. The purple notes. I do think actually this might be like kind of an aside, but the purple microphone in the M80 series of the colored ones, it looks the least tacky, which is why I like it. It's like the purple is a little bit like more metallic and smoother looking on it, and so I'm like it pops real nice.
Nice. Yeah.
And then I use a Voice Live a lot of times, TC Helicon Voice Live on my vocal chain.
Do you when I'm curious because I've had a few of the different TC pedals. I've had the Voice Live and acoustic play and a few different things. And I'm curious, when you play live, do you use those at gigs?
Yeah, on my acoustic stuff, I use it every time. Because it's like even if I'm not using like the harmony, I use the play acoustic is the one I have because it reads your guitar chords and then can match your harmonies if you don't feel like going in and doing all the presets and stuff. And it's probably my favorite piece of kit that I have. I use it every single like acoustic gig, even if just to add a little bit of reverb or a little bit of delay to my vocal channel just to take some of the dryness out of it. By the way, when I record, I use this mic. It's a WA67. It's my
The warm audio, right?
Yeah, tube mic. I'm very much in the tube family. But yeah, for
bad with our SM50.
I was talking to my drummer and he was like, "Are you going to use the 67 for this for this interview?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think I will."
I should have set up all the I should have brought all the most expensive mics I have.
But yeah, for the band stuff, I used it on our last gig just because there's like some songs that like we had a breakdown part where it was like just vocals and guitar, and I wanted to add a little bit more, sonic juiciness to that part. Yeah. So I like it, and it's super cheap. It's a super versatile piece of equipment.
Oh yeah, for sure. Are you the only singer in the band?
There's a couple songs that have dual parts. Like one of our songs, "Existence," is a song that originally I used to do it acoustically, but when I recorded it, there's like a choral part in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so now our bass player kind of just switched up to backup vocals, and so he'll do like some of the backup vocals and like call and response things live, but on the recordings it's all me. So
right on.
Yeah.
You guys have any questions you want to throw out?
I don't think so. Yeah.
Cool. You got anything you want to plug while you're on here, Lee?
Just it would be great if you listen to the music. We worked really hard on it. We're super proud of it. There's a lot of it's a lot of emotion to go into writing something and sharing it with 4 other guys, much less, the internet. So if people would listen to it, I really appreciate it. It's going to be called, like I said, Midwest Girls Can't Break My Heart Underneath the Full Moon. It's going out on everything. We're Private Education is the band name. And so like all our social is pretty much Private Ed music or Privateed music, if you're reading it that way. Instagram, all that stuff. The show that we're playing where we're releasing the song is obviously going to be over by the time that this podcast comes out. But we do have a show lined up in Indianapolis if anybody wants to come out and hear us play live. The soonest one I know about is in March 11th in Indianapolis. We'll be playing at State Street Pub with a band called Ross Hollow. So if anybody is around and wants to listen to that, that's where we'll be.
Awesome. We'll send them that way.
Cool.
All right. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
All right, so next week will be part 2 of our modulation exploration. Thanks for joining us on Woodwire and Watts. Until next time, tune up,
Crank the volume.
Let it rip.